You've arrived at CozySideAudio, where dreams begin with a story. Whether you're studying, journaling, or just chilling, this one's for you. If you vibe with this kind of content, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe for more.
CozySideAudio presents The Girl Before the Other Girl. Chapter 1, The Beginning of Us. Some people say you never really remember the moment you meet your best friend. That it just happens somewhere along the way, and before you realize it, they've become a constant in your life. But I remember. I remember because Jamie Porter ruined my brand new Converse the day we met. It was 6th grade, the kind of September day that clung to summer, too hot, too loud, and too long. My mom had just dropped me off at Oakfield Middle, and I was walking with my head down, trying to look invisible in a sea of kids who already seemed to know everyone else. Then, out of nowhere, a soccer ball came flying across the blacktop and hit me square in the side of the leg. I stumbled, tripped, and landed right in the mud puddle left over from the sprinklers that morning. And when I looked up, there he was, lanky, messy-haired, brown-eyed boy with the most horrified expression I'd ever seen. "Oh my God," he'd said, running toward me. "I'm so sorry, are you okay?" I remember glaring up at him, my leg half covered in mud. "Do I look okay?" His panic must have looked real enough because I couldn't hold the glare for long. He offered me his hand, then hesitated. "You're Raylan, right? You were in Mrs. Carter's class last year?" I didn't even know his name yet, but I nodded. And when he tried to help me up, I took his hand and said, "You owe me new shoes." He grinned that kind of grin that makes you want to stay mad but can't. Deal. That was how it started. The girl with muddy shoes and the boy who couldn't stop apologizing. Over the next few weeks, he sat behind me in science class and started passing notes. Stupid jokes, doodles of our teacher, bad puns that made me want to roll my eyes but made me smile anyway. He'd walk me home sometimes, carrying both our backpacks because I said it made me look short next to him. And one day, when a kid in the cafeteria made fun of me for tripping on the stairs, Jamie threw his pudding cup at the kid's backpack. The lunch lady gave him detention. I gave him half my sandwich. That was the moment I knew maybe not love. Not yet, but something close to it. Now, 5 years later, he's sitting across from me in the library. His hair a little neater, but still doing that thing where it falls over his forehead when he's focused. I pretend to read my notes, but really I'm watching him the way you watch something that feels too familiar and too fragile to disturb. He's tapping his pencil against the table, eyes narrowed at a practice test. If angle A is 36 degrees and... 64, I interrupt before he can finish. It's 64. You already did that one wrong once. He glances up, smirking. I was testing you. I roll my eyes and lean back in my chair. Sure you were, Mr. Stanford? Hey, he says, tossing his pencil at me. Don't jinx it. I haven't even sent my essay yet. Oh, please. I rest my chin on my hand. You could write about how much you love pizza rolls and they'd still let you in. He laughs the kind of quiet laugh that makes his shoulders shake a little. Maybe. But if I get in, I'm taking you out for pizza rolls. Like fancy ones. Fancy pizza rolls don't exist. They will when I invent them. He says it like it's a promise. And that's the thing about Jamie, everything he says sounds like a promise, even when it isn't. I reach across the table to grab his notes, brushing his hand accidentally on purpose. You know, I don't think I've ever met anyone who studies this much. He gives me a sideways look. You literally help me study every day. I'm trying to make sure my future Stanford friend doesn't forget me when he becomes a big-shot scientist or whatever. He grins. You're dramatic. You love it. Maybe, he says quietly, looking back down at his notes. Maybe. That word hangs in the air longer than it should. After study sessions, we always walk home together. It's a tradition. We've been neighbors since sophomore year after my mom moved us 2 streets over. His house is the one with the perfect lawn and the blue porch swing that creaks when the wind hits just right. Mine's the one with the mailbox that leans slightly left and the wildflowers that never grow in straight lines. The sunset paints everything gold as we walk, and I do what I always do. loop my arm through his. "Raylan," he says, pretending to protest, "do you ever not cling to people?" "Only you," I say, smiling. "You should feel special." He laughs under his breath but doesn't pull away. He never does. That's what gets me every time, the way he lets me. The way he never realizes what it means. We pass by the corner store, where the owner waves at us through the window. Jamie grabs 2 sodas from the fridge inside and pays before I can even take out my wallet. "Got your favorite," he says, handing me one. "You act like you're my boyfriend or something," I tease, opening the can. He pauses for half a second, too short for most people to notice. "Guess I just know what you like." My chest tightens in that frustrating, familiar way. If only he knew. Later that night, I'm lying on my bed, phone lighting up the ceiling with a faint blue glow. Jamie's name pops up in my notifications. "Jamie, don't forget to bring your notes for AP Chem tomorrow." Me, "Only if you promise to buy me breakfast." Jamie, "You eat more than anyone I know." Me, "Love you too." I hit send before I can second guess it. He sends back a laughing emoji. Sometimes I wonder if he ever reads between the lines. Or if I've just become background noise, something soft and familiar he doesn't have to look too closely at. The next day at lunch, Lawson slides into the seat across from me, her tray clattering against the table. She's got her usual iced coffee and a smirk that means she's about to say something I don't want to hear. "So," she starts, "still not dating him?" I groan. "Hi, Lawson. How's your day?" Don't deflect. She stirs her coffee like it's a ritual. "You're basically a married couple. The only thing missing is an actual date." He doesn't see me like that. She raises an eyebrow. "You sure? Because the entire cafeteria does." "That's because people are nosy," I say, stabbing at my salad. "We're just close, that's all." "Close?" Lawson snorts. "You lean on him like a pillow. You call him love half the time." "It's a joke." "To you, maybe." Her words sting, but I don't show it. "Look, he's focused on Stanford. I'm not going to mess that up for him." "Raylan," she says gently, "you can't keep pretending this is fine." I don't answer. Instead, I look across the cafeteria to where Jamie's sitting with his lab partner, explaining something on his laptop. His hair falls forward and he pushes it back without looking up. "I'm not pretending," I say softly. "I'm just waiting." "For what?" "For him to notice." Lawson sighs and reaches across the table to squeeze my hand. "You're gonna break your own heart, you know that?" "Maybe," I whisper. "But if I do, at least I'll know I tried." That night, I'm at Jamie's again. His mom waves me in like always. His house smells like cinnamon and coffee, the kind of scent that's so him I could find it in a crowd. We spread out our books across his floor, and I start reading the quiz questions out loud. He's lying on his stomach, scribbling answers. "You'd make a good teacher." I laugh. "Yeah, right. I can barely remember to do my own homework." "You're better at this than you think." He looks up at me then, and for a second something shifts. His eyes linger longer than usual, like he's about to say something else. But then he looks back down, scribbling again. "Hey," he says suddenly, "I got invited to that college prep seminar next week. Stanford's rep is supposed to be there." "That's awesome," I say, smiling. "You're gonna kill it." "You think so?" "I know so." He grins, then flips a page. "You should come." I blink. "What? Why?" "Because you'd make it fun. Plus, you can quiz me in the car." I can't tell if he's joking or serious, but it doesn't matter. My heart's already doing that annoying flutter thing. "Fine," I say casually, "but only if you buy snacks." "Deal." When I get home, I find Lawson waiting on my porch steps. She's scrolling through her phone, pretending she's not freezing in her oversized hoodie. "You have zero self-preservation," I tell her. "Had to see if you were still alive," she says, getting up. "How's Mr. Stanford?" "Fine." "And your heart?" I shrug. "Still functioning." She studies me for a second, like she's trying to decide whether to push. Then she sighs. You're impossible. I prefer complicated. She grins. Same thing. We sit together for a while, not talking. The streetlights flicker on, painting everything in that soft orange haze that makes you feel nostalgic for something that hasn't even ended yet. Lawson? I say quietly. Yeah? What if he never does? She looks at me, her expression softer than I expect. Then you'll still be okay. I don't feel like I will. You will, she says, because you're Raylan Nichols. You don't need him to see you to know you're worth being seen. I smile, but it's shaky. I just wish he'd look, you know? Yeah, she says. I know. Later that night, I'm lying in bed again. My phone buzzes once a picture from Jamie. It's of his desk, messy with notes, and a caption that says, "You'd be proud. Didn't even procrastinate tonight." I send back, "Who are you and what have you done with Jamie Porter?" He replies with a laughing emoji, then, "Night, Ray." I stare at the message for a long time before typing, "Night, love you." This time, I don't add an emoji. And this time, he doesn't reply. If someone asked me what it feels like to love your best friend, I'd tell them it's like holding your breath every time they smile. Like being so close you can feel the warmth, but never the fire. Like living in the moment before something changes when everything still feels almost perfect. And almost is enough. For now, at least. Chapter 2. The Study Sessions. The smell of pencil shavings and microwave popcorn will forever remind me of studying with Jamie Porter. It was one of those late September nights that hummed with still summer heat. The kind of evening where crickets sang outside your window, and the sky bled into navy blue so slowly it felt like the day didn't want to end. Jamie sat cross-legged on the floor of my room, surrounded by a battlefield of highlighters, loose-leaf paper, and half-eaten bags of chips. We'd been prepping for our AP Bio exam for 3 hours. Okay, I said, flipping through his notes dramatically. Question number 21. Define endoplasmic reticulum. Bonus points if you make it sound sexy. He gave me that tired, amused look, the one that meant I was distracting him on purpose, and he knew it. You're hopeless, he said. You love it, I teased. Answer's simple, he said. It's basically the cell's shipping center. Rough ER handles proteins, smooth ER handles lipids. Now can I have my notes back? I clutched them to my chest. Only if you say it's sexy. He groaned. You're ridiculous. Incorrect, I said, wagging my pen at him. I'm motivational. You'd be bored to death without me. Jamie reached out and snatched the notebook from my hands, his grin spreading as I gasped in mock betrayal. I'd have peace and quiet, he said. But you'd miss me, I shot back. He froze for a split second, not long enough to be awkward, just long enough for me to notice. Then he smiled again, softer this time. Yeah, maybe. My heart did a stupid little flip that I immediately tried to hide by shoving a handful of popcorn into my mouth. I hated how easily his words could turn my stomach into a fluttering mess. We'd been doing this for years, joking, teasing, saying things that probably meant nothing to him but everything to me. By 9:30, our study session had turned into a mess of laughter and snack crumbs. Jamie lay on his stomach, his pencil tapping against the carpet as he worked through practice problems. I sat cross-legged beside him, reading flashcards in my most dramatic narrator voice. Question 12, I began. Explain how enzymes catalyze reactions. Wait, no, you have to do it in a British accent. He looked up at me, squinting. Why? Because everything sounds smarter in British. He sighed and tried to mimic one. Enzymes lower activation energy, he said, the accent coming out somewhere between British and Australian. I doubled over laughing. That was terrible. Then stop making me do it, he said, laughing too. There it was again, the easy rhythm between us. The unspoken comfort of knowing exactly how to make the other laugh. His smile always reached his eyes. It always had. Sometimes I wondered if he even realized how effortless he made it for me to fall for him again and again. When he leaned over my shoulder to look at the flashcard, I felt the warmth of him, the closeness. My breath caught, even though it shouldn't have. It was nothing new. He'd been invading my personal space since middle school. Still, it did things to my heart it shouldn't. By the time it hit 10:30, my mom poked her head into my room. "You two still alive in here?" she asked, arms crossed with a half smile. "Barely," I said. "He's dying of overachievement." Jamie waved a hand weakly. "Send help, or caffeine." Mom laughed. "All right, but don't stay up too late. Some of us have jobs in the morning." She left and Jamie grinned. "I think your mom likes me more than she likes you." "She does," I admitted. "You actually listen when she talks." "That's because she gives good advice," he said. "And I don't?" He shot me a teasing look. "You once told me to solve my stress by buying a new hoodie." "Did it help?" He shrugged. "Yeah, kinda." "Then you're welcome." Midnight came faster than we meant it to. The notes had turned into idle doodles and inside jokes. He had drawn a stick figure labeled Future Vet Raylan standing next to a cartoon cow. I'd written Stanford or Bust in big letters across one of his pages and surrounded it with sparkly pen stars. "I can't believe you're aiming for Stanford," I said, half in awe, half in disbelief. "Like actually aiming. Do you even sleep anymore?" He shrugged. "I'll sleep when I get in." "You will get in," I said automatically. "You're too smart not to." He gave me a sideways glance. "You really think so?" "I know so," I said. "And when you do, I'll come visit with, cookies and confetti or something." He grinned. "You're gonna drive across the country just to bring cookies?" "Only if they let me in the gate," I said. "Otherwise, I'll just throw them over the wall and hope you catch them." Jamie laughed, shaking his head. "You're insane. Insanely supportive." At 1 a.m., I realized I hadn't stopped smiling for hours. We'd gotten through maybe half of the study guide, but it didn't matter. I liked the way his voice sounded when he explained things, how focused he got when he cared about something. I liked that he let me be there. When he finally packed up his backpack, he yawned so hard his eyes watered. "If I fail this test, it's on you." I gasped. "Excuse me? I was the best study partner ever." "You kept making me read definitions and accents." "That's called active learning." He laughed. "Pretty sure it's called procrastination." I walked him to the door, still playfully arguing. The porch light glowed soft and yellow around us, and for a moment it felt like the world had slowed down just enough to notice how good this was. How safe. He slung his backpack over one shoulder. "Night, Ray." "Night, genius," I said. Then, like I always did, like I had since freshman year, I added, "Love you." He laughed the same way he always did, easy and light. "Love you too, coach." He said it like a joke. I said it like a secret. And he never noticed the difference. When I went back inside, my mom was half asleep on the couch, the TV glowing faintly. She cracked one eye open as I tiptoed past. "Did he leave?" "Yeah," I said quietly. She smiled drowsily. "That boy's here more than he's not." I smiled back, even though my chest ached just a little. "Yeah," I said softly. "He is." I turned off the lamp and went upstairs. My room still smelled like popcorn and highlighter ink, like laughter caught in the air. I fell onto my bed, staring at the ceiling, still hearing his laugh echoing in my head. He thought it was just another study night. But for me, it was one more memory I'd never stop replaying. Chapter 3. Home turf. The Saturday sun poured through Raylan's bedroom window in streaks of gold, landing on the pile of flashcards she'd left scattered across her desk the night before. They were all labeled with things like biology terms and AP Chem equations, but most of them had little doodles in the corners. Hearts, paw prints, sometimes a messy JR followed by a hasty scribble to cover it up. She told herself it was a joke, like everything else between them. Outside, she could already hear her mom moving around the kitchen. The clatter of a pan, the hum of the coffee maker, the faint sound of a morning show playing from the little TV by the counter. Saturdays in the Nichols house were slower, softer. Her mom worked as a nurse, which meant most of the week she was gone before sunrise and home well after dinner. So weekends were sacred, reserved for pancakes, laundry, and teasing her daughter about her boyfriend. Raylan groaned and rolled over, hugging her pillow to her chest. She could already hear the conversation waiting for her when she went downstairs. Her phone buzzed against her nightstand. A text. "Jamie, you up?" She smiled before she even read it. Raylan, "Barely." "Jamie, need you to quiz me again before Monday. You're the only person who can make covalent bonds sound fun." Raylan, "That's because I have charisma. And you have none." Jamie, "Rude. Be ready in 10. She let out a soft laugh, sitting up and rubbing her eyes. 10 minutes. Typical Jamie. Always assuming she was ready to drop everything for him, and she usually was. She got dressed in her usual Saturday clothes, loose sweatshirt, shorts, messy ponytail. She checked herself in the mirror out of habit, then shook her head. "He's not coming over for that," she muttered under her breath. But still, she put on lip balm. Just in case. By the time she padded downstairs, her mom was already flipping pancakes at the stove, her hair tied up in its usual messy bun. "Morning, sunshine," her mom said, not looking up. "Your favorite, blueberry." "You're the best," Raylan said, kissing her cheek before grabbing a glass of orange juice. Her mom eyed her for a moment. "Jamie coming over?" Raylan nearly choked on her drink. "What? Why would you?" "Because every time I make pancakes, that boy shows up like clockwork." "Don't play dumb, Ray. You've been friends since you were, what, 10? I should start setting an extra plate automatically." Raylan rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her grin. "He's just coming over to study. Big test Monday." "Mm-hmm," her mom hummed, clearly unconvinced. "Studying, sure." Before Raylan could respond, there was a knock on the front door. 2 quick taps, 1 pause, then a final knock. His knock. "Told you," her mom said, smirking. "You might as well marry him if you're gonna see him this much." Raylan groaned and threw her napkin at her. "Mom." But she was already halfway to the door, pretending she wasn't smiling. Jamie stood there holding 2 iced coffees, the morning light making his hair look like it had flecks of gold in it. He wore a Stanford hoodie. Again. And jeans that had a tear near the knee. "Morning," he said, handing her one of the coffees. "Extra caramel. Don't say I don't know you." Raylan raised a brow. Bribery before a study session? Desperate much. He grinned. "I prefer strategic." She stepped aside to let him in. Her mom leaned casually against the counter as they entered the kitchen, pretending to be busy stacking plates. "Well, look who it is," she said with a grin. "Morning, Jamie." "Morning, Mrs. Nichols," he said, always polite. "Smells amazing in here." "Blueberry pancakes. You hungry?" "Always." Raylan gave her mom a look. "Do not start." But her mom just smiled and started scooping pancakes onto plates. "I'll let you 2 geniuses get to your work after breakfast. Studying's easier with a full stomach." Jamie sat at the counter like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Because he had. Her mom loved him. Everyone did. Even the cat came trotting into the kitchen to rub against his leg. "You spoil him," Raylan muttered. Her mom raised a brow. "You're just jealous because he listens when I tell him to eat." Jamie smirked over his plate. "I do take orders well." Raylan flicked a blueberry at him. After breakfast, they set up at the kitchen table with textbooks, highlighters, and Raylan's mess of handwritten notes. The sun had climbed higher, pouring through the back windows and warming the wooden table. Jamie leaned back in his chair, flipping through the textbook. "Okay, quiz me." Raylan put on a dramatic voice. Question 1. If sodium and chlorine walk into a bar. He groaned, covering his face. "Please don't." "And bond together forever, what are they?" He laughed despite himself. "Table salt." "Correct. And they lived happily ever after until someone poured them on fries." He shook his head, grinning. "You're ridiculous." She rested her chin on her hand, watching him with a smile that lingered too long. You love it. He didn't look up. Yeah, I do. The words hung there for a beat, casual on the surface but heavy underneath. Raylan looked back at her notes quickly, trying not to smile too wide. They studied for hours, falling into their familiar rhythm. Her quizzing, him pretending to be annoyed, both of them laughing through the exhaustion. Occasionally, her mom would walk by with laundry or coffee refills, peeking at them over the counter like she was watching her favorite show. At one point, Raylan caught Jamie staring out the window, his pencil spinning between his fingers. What? She asked softly. He glanced over. Nothing, just thinking. About? About how you somehow make this boring stuff. Not boring. She rolled her eyes. That's because you secretly love me. He smirked. Oh, definitely. You and ionic compounds. Raylan threw a pen cap at him. Loser. But she couldn't stop smiling. Later, when the sun started dipping lower and the air outside shifted into that hazy, golden hour glow, Jamie gathered his books. I should probably head home. My mom will start wondering if I moved in here. Raylan stood, stretching her arms above her head. You basically have. We should start charging you rent. He laughed. Fine, but only if it comes with blueberry pancakes. Her mom called from the living room. It will if you marry her. Raylan's face turned bright red. Mom, Jamie grinned, his eyes lighting up. Wow, I think that's the first time she said that out loud. She's kidding, Raylan said quickly, trying to hide her fluster. She says stuff like that all the time. Uh-huh, he teased. Sure she does. When he stepped toward the door, she followed him out to the porch. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and summer. Hey, he said, adjusting his backpack strap. Thanks again. You're the best study partner I've ever had. She smiled faintly. That's because I'm the only one who puts up with you. Exactly. He started down the steps, but she called after him. Jamie? He turned, the sun catching his face just right, making him look older somehow. You'll get there, she said quietly. Stanford, or wherever. You're too good not to. He smiled, that kind of soft, genuine smile that made her chest ache. Right back at you, Nichols. You're gonna be the best vet in the state. She laughed lightly. You think? I know, he said simply. Then, almost as an afterthought, see you Monday? Yeah, night, Jamie. He grinned. Night. As he disappeared down the sidewalk, Raylan leaned against the porch railing, her heart both full and hollow at the same time. Inside, her mom's voice drifted from the living room. You really like him, huh? Raylan turned, startled. Mom, seriously? Her mom shrugged, folding laundry. You don't have to tell me. I see it every time you look at him. Raylan hesitated, then smiled faintly. He's my best friend. Her mom nodded. Yeah, that's usually how it starts. Raylan turned back toward the window, where the last bit of sunlight glowed over the street. She thought about Jamie's laugh, his focus, the way he always said her name like it meant something. She whispered under her breath. To no one but herself. Good night. Love you. The words hung softly in the air, the same way they always did, unheard, unreturned, but still hers to keep. Chapter 4. Little Things. There were 1,000 little ways people fell in love quietly, accidentally, and long before they realized it. For Raylan, it wasn't grand gestures or confessions that made her heart tighten. It was the everyday things, the way Jamie leaned on her locker like it was his own, the way he always saved her a seat at lunch, or how he'd hand her his hoodie without her ever asking when the classroom AC kicked in too strong. And then there was the way everyone else saw it. You two are literally married, one of the girls in her English class said one morning, watching as Jamie absent-mindedly ruffled Raylan's hair on his way out. Raylan tried to laugh it off. We're just friends. The girl smirked. Sure, that's what everyone says before the wedding. Raylan just rolled her eyes, though her cheeks burned all the way down the hall. The day started like most of them did. Raylan walking into school half awake, clutching her coffee like it was the only thing keeping her alive. The halls buzzed with chatter, lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking against tile. She found Jamie near the main staircase, already digging through his backpack like he'd lost something important. "You look like you're defusing a bomb," she said, leaning against the railing. "Close," he said without looking up. "I can't find my calc notes." Raylan reached into her own bag and handed them to him. "You mean these?" He blinked. "How?" "You left them on my desk last night. Again." Jamie grinned sheepishly. "I knew you'd save me." She smirked. "I should start charging you a rescue fee." "Add it to my tab." They fell into step together down the hall, his shoulder brushing hers in that way that made her pulse jump just a little. They passed the trophy case, the science club flyers, the rows of classrooms filled with sleepy faces. Same path, same rhythm like they'd been doing this forever. "You ready for the exam next week?" he asked. "As ready as I'll ever be." "You'll crush it, you always do." She smiled softly. "You say that like you're not literally top of the class." He shrugged. "Yeah, but you work harder." Raylan laughed. "That's because I have something to prove." He tilted his head. "To who?" She didn't answer right away. "Myself, I guess." He nodded like he understood because somehow he always did. At lunch, their table by the window was already half filled with friends. Lawson Pitt sat cross-legged on the bench, her hair tucked behind one ear as she scrolled through her phone. "Took you too long enough," she said without looking up. "I was starting to think you eloped." Raylan gave her a look. "You're not funny." "I'm hilarious." Lawson leaned over, snagging one of Jamie's chips. "Besides, everyone's talking about how you guys were basically making hard eyes in the hallway this morning." Jamie nearly choked on his sandwich. "What? We weren't." Lawson grinned. "See? Denial is the first stage." Raylan elbowed her. "Can you not start rumors?" "Too late. It's not a rumor if it's true." Jamie laughed, shaking his head. "You're impossible." "And you're blind," Lawson muttered under her breath, too quiet for him to hear. Raylan caught it, though. She always did. She just didn't respond. They spent most of lunch like that, easy conversation. Familiar teasing, the kind of laughter that drew looks from nearby tables. Raylan liked when he laughed like that, unguarded and bright. At one point, she reached over and took a sip from his drink without asking. He gave her a look. "Really?" "What?" she said, feigning innocence. "You weren't drinking it." "You could have just asked." "I could have," she said, grinning. "But this is more fun." Jamie shook his head, smiling despite himself. "You're lucky I like you." Her heart stuttered, even though she knew he didn't mean it like that. "I know," she said softly. After lunch, they walked together toward their next class. The hallways were loud, crowded lockers slamming, laughter echoing, the usual high school chaos. Raylan brushed a crumb from his shirt sleeve. "You're messy." He gave her a look. "You literally just stole my drink and I'm the messy one?" "Exactly." He laughed, shaking his head, and she reached up without thinking to poke his cheek. "Hey," he said, swatting her hand away. "What? You make that face when you're trying not to smile." "I do not." "You do," she said, poking him again. "Raylan." She grinned, darting ahead. "Can't prove it if you can't catch me." Jamie chased her down the hall, their laughter echoing between the lockers. A few teachers gave them looks, but no one really stopped them. Everyone was used to the sight by now. Jamie and Raylan, inseparable, orbiting each other like they had their own gravity. When he finally caught up, he grabbed her wrist gently, out of breath and smiling. "You're gonna get me detention one of these days," he said between laughs. "Worth it," she said. He didn't let go right away. Neither did she. That afternoon, they stayed after school for a group study session in the library. The golden light filtered through the tall windows, dust floating lazily in the air. Raylan sprawled across the table, flipping through flashcards. "Okay, Mr. Genius, what's the equation for cellular respiration?" Jamie groaned. You're kidding, right? Answer the question. He sighed dramatically. C6H12 O66026CO26H2O energy. She grinned. See? You are learning. Yeah, because you're terrifying when you quiz me wrong. Fear is a great motivator. He threw a crumpled piece of paper at her. You're the worst, Raylan laughed, catching it. And yet here you are. He leaned back, smirking. Yeah, guess I'm a glutton for punishment. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The only sound was the quiet hum of the AC and the rustle of papers. She watched the way the light caught his profile, how focused he looked even when he was teasing her. He really was everything she admired, smart, kind, driven. She didn't need him to love her back to know how rare that was. But still, sometimes she wished he'd just see. Later that week, it rained. The kind of soft, steady rain that blurred the edges of everything. Streets shining, tree branches dripping, umbrellas blooming across the courtyard. Raylan and Jamie shared one, walking close enough that their shoulders brushed. You know, he said, you could have brought your own umbrella. And miss this? Never. He gave her a look, but he was smiling. You're ridiculous. She grinned. And yet, here you are. He shook his head, laughing softly. Yeah, whatever helps you sleep at night. She wanted to tell him that these little things were what helped her sleep. The walks, the laughter, the easy rhythm between them. But she didn't. She just let the silence stretch, comfortable and warm beneath the rain. When they reached her house, she handed the umbrella back to him. You should go before it gets worse. You sure? Yeah, I'll be fine. He nodded, tucking the umbrella under his arm. Night, Ray. Night, Jamie. As he walked away, she stood on the porch watching the rain beat across the streetlights. Inside, the house was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt both peaceful and lonely. She dropped her bag by the door and leaned against the wall, smiling faintly despite herself. These were the little things, she told herself, the moments that didn't mean much to anyone else but meant everything to her. The way he said her name, the way he always came back, the way he never seemed to notice how hard she tried not to love him. Raylan wasn't sure when she'd started holding on to those small things so tightly. Maybe it was somewhere between all the study sessions and the walks home. Or maybe it had been there from the very beginning. All she knew is that when she thought about him, it wasn't the big things she remembered. It was the sound of rain, the warmth of his hand brushing hers, the quiet space between laughter and goodbye. And somewhere deep down, a voice whispered that it was enough. For now. Chapter 5. The first hint of change. There was something about early autumn that made everything feel sharper: the air, the light, even the sound of lockers slamming in the morning. By mid-October, the trees along Brookfield's streets had turned gold and red, and the afternoons carried that faint chill that hinted winter wasn't too far behind. The world was shifting, and Raylan felt it, though she couldn't have said why at first. It wasn't like anything was different between her and Jamie. They still met by the lockers in the morning, still walked together between classes, still ended their study nights with the same easy rhythm that made her feel like she'd never really have to miss him. But somewhere between the laughter and late-night study sessions, something changed, not in what he did, but in what he said. Stanford, Jamie said, like the word wasn't supposed to hit her like a punch to the chest. They were sitting on the steps outside the library, notebooks scattered between them, sunlight spilling across his jeans and her sneakers. He said it so casually, like he was talking about lunch. I sent my early application last night, he added, flipping a pen through his fingers. It's a long shot, but might as well try, right? Raylan blinked, trying to catch up. Wait, Stanford? Like, California Stanford? Yeah. He smiled that shy, proud kind of smile he did when he was nervous about something but trying to play it cool. I know it's far, but their program's insane. If I actually get in... She tried to keep her tone light. You'd be, what, 3,000 miles away? More like 2,800. he said, grinning. She forced a laugh. Oh, well, that makes it better. He nudged her knee with his. Hey, come on. You know I'd still visit. You think you can get rid of me that easy? She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Guess not. He didn't notice. He almost never did when it came to things like that. Later that night, Raylan lay sprawled on her bed with her notes open, the words blurring on the page. Her phone buzzed. Jamie, you alive or did bio finally kill you? Raylan, barely hanging on. You? Jamie, still in the trenches. Raylan, proud of you, Stanford man. Jamie, ha, you remembered. Raylan, kinda hard to forget. Jamie, you'll have to come visit if I actually get in. Raylan, yeah, maybe I'll just follow you there. Jamie, LOL, you hate the heat. Raylan, fine, somewhere nearby then. She sent it before she could stop herself. And then, because it felt too revealing, she tossed her phone face down on the comforter and stared at the ceiling. It wasn't that she didn't want him to chase his dream. Of course she did. Jamie had been talking about Stanford since freshman year, his eyes lighting up every time he mentioned it. It was who he was. Ambitious, driven, always reaching higher. She loved that about him. She always had. But loving someone's ambition was hard when it meant watching them build a future without you in it. Raylan flipped onto her side, her heart restless. She could already picture it him in some sun-soaked campus courtyard, his Stanford sweatshirt crisp and new, surrounded by people just like him. People who'd get his jokes about physics and spend all night in study groups without needing her to quiz them or remind them to eat. She didn't want to be jealous. She wanted to be proud, but both feelings tangled together in a way she couldn't quite untie. Maybe that's what scared her most, that she'd become someone left behind in the picture, a name he mentioned when he talked about back home. The next afternoon, she brought it up again, testing the waters. So, she said, walking beside him after class. Stanford, huh? You didn't even tell me you were applying early. He adjusted his backpack strap. I didn't want to jinx it. You know how my mom is, she'd throw a party just for submitting the app. Raylan laughed. Honestly, same. My mom would post it on Facebook with 1,000,000 exclamation points. He grinned. See? That's why I didn't say anything yet. She kicked a pebble along the sidewalk. Still, you could have told me. I thought we didn't keep secrets. Jamie looked at her, a flicker of apology in his eyes. It's not a secret. I just didn't want to make a big deal about it. It is a big deal, she said softly. He smiled, that easy, lopsided one that always melted her. Then you can make a big deal about it for me. She bumped his shoulder. Fine. But when you get famous for curing cancer or inventing a robot that does homework, I get credit for supporting you first. He laughed. Deal. That weekend, he came over to study, or at least that was the plan. Raylan had spread her textbooks across the kitchen table, but Jamie was more interested in trying to teach her card tricks with the deck her mom kept in the junk drawer. You're supposed to be reviewing, she said, flipping through her notes. I'm multitasking, he said, fanning out the cards. Watch this. She sighed, amused. If you pull another ace from your sleeve, I'm quitting. Not this time. Promise. He shuffled, flicked a card into the air, caught it, and somehow managed to make it disappear behind his other hand. Okay, where did it go? She demanded, leaning forward. He smirked. Trade secret. Jamie Porter, if you don't show me... Her mom's voice floated in from the living room. Is that Jamie I hear? Raylan groaned. Yep. A moment later, her mom appeared in the doorway, dish towel slung over her shoulder and a grin that made Raylan instantly brace herself. Well, if it isn't my favorite pseudo-son, she said. Jamie smiled politely. Hey, Mrs. Nichols. Her mom gave her a look that said, You really think I haven't noticed? Before she leaned against the counter. You kids need snacks? Or, what's that thing you always drink, Jamie? That chai stuff? I'm good, thanks. Suit yourself. Her mom winked at Raylan before disappearing again. As soon as she was gone, Raylan groaned into her hands. She's so embarrassing. Jamie chuckled. She's just being nice. She's being nosy. He shrugged. Comes with the territory. You're basically her favorite. Raylan peeked up. You think? Definitely. I mean, she tolerates me. She more than tolerates you. She literally called you her pseudo-son. Yeah, and you just sat there pretending not to die of embarrassment. I was dying, she said, laughing. You just didn't see it. He grinned. You hide it well. They eventually gave up on studying and sat on the porch instead, watching the sky fade from orange to pink to purple. The air smelled like rain and grass, and the crickets were just starting up. Jamie leaned back against the railing, his gaze distant. You ever think about where you'll be next year? Yeah, she said after a moment. I mean, I don't have it all figured out yet, but maybe somewhere nearby. A college with a good vet program. He smiled, glancing over. That sounds perfect for you. You think? I know. His voice softened. You'll get there. You're too good not to. It hit her harder than she expected, not just the words, but the way he said them, like he believed it more than she did. Thanks, she said quietly. He nodded, smiling faintly. You've always known what you wanted. I envy that. Yeah, but you actually go after it. That's because I have you making sure I don't slack off. She rolled her eyes, though she was smiling. You're welcome. He looked out toward the fading sunset. Whatever happens, Ray, I hope we don't lose this. She blinked. Lose what? This, he said simply. Us. You know, hanging out, talking about everything and nothing? I don't want college to change that. She wanted to tell him she didn't either, that she couldn't even imagine a version of her life where he wasn't in it. But all she said was, yeah, me neither. That night, Raylan sat by her window, laptop open, searching for colleges. She wasn't even sure what she was looking for until she typed it. Universities near Stanford with pre-vet programs. Her eyes scanned the list, heart steady now. It wasn't about chasing him, not entirely. It was about chasing something that kept them in the same orbit. If he was going to chase his dream, she would too. Not just to stay near him, but to prove to herself she could. Chapter 6, Lawson's Warnings. Lawson had that kind of expression that made people tell the truth, that quiet, tilted head look she used whenever someone started pretending they were fine. It was what made her such a good friend and an even worse person to lie to. And right now, she was giving Raylan that look. They were sitting on the bleachers after school, the football field empty except for a couple of kids kicking a ball around, and the golden slant of afternoon light spilling across the track. Raylan had a water bottle between her knees, picking at the plastic label while Lawson watched her in silence. Are you going to tell me what's actually going on? Lawson finally said. Or should I just start guessing? Raylan smiled, too casually. You're going to have to narrow it down. A lot goes on in my life, you know. Uh-huh. Lawson's tone was dry, patient. Let's start with why you looked like someone ran over your dog when Jamie mentioned working on that essay at lunch. Raylan froze mid-pick, her finger still on the torn edge of the label. I wasn't... She huffed a small laugh. You're dramatic. Lawson tilted her head again. I'm right. You're observant, Raylan corrected. Same thing. Raylan sighed, leaning back until she felt the cold metal of the bleacher press into her shoulders. Above them, the sky was that late autumn color, pale blue fading toward lavender at the edges. It's not like that, she murmured. I don't know. He's got a lot on his plate. And you'd know, Lawson said softly, because you're the plate. Raylan snorted despite herself. Wow, thanks. I mean it, Lawson said, folding her arms. You're always there. Always helping, always making it easy for him. Don't get me wrong, I love Jamie, he's a good guy, but Ray, he doesn't see you. That hit like a pin to a balloon. Quiet, small, but enough to make everything inside her deflate a little. Raylan swallowed. That's not true. Lawson's look said it was. You think he does? Raylan opened her mouth and closed it. She thought of all their nights studying, her dramatic quizzing, his laugh when she said, "Love you," like a joke. The way he always smiled when she walked into a room but never quite looked at her. He just hasn't realized it yet, she said finally. He will. Lawson exhaled, long and slow. Ray. What? You can't wait around forever hoping someone figures out you're the main character in their story. Raylan laughed lightly, but it cracked a little. I'm not waiting around. Lawson raised an eyebrow. I'm not, Raylan said again, louder this time. We're friends, that's it. Lawson's non-committal hum said she didn't believe that either. They sat in silence for a minute, the wind picking up and brushing strands of Raylan's hair across her face. Down on the field, one of the boys shouted when the ball veered off course, his voice echoing into the stillness. Raylan felt her heart sink, the conversation pressing into the soft part of her she didn't like touching. I just don't want things to change, she said quietly. You know? Like, if I said anything, if I made it weird. Lawson's face softened. You're not making it weird. He's just not paying attention. Raylan let out a bitter little laugh. Story of my life. The next day at school, Lawson's warning replayed in her head more times than she could count. Between classes, at lunch, even while Jamie talked beside her, her best friend's words echoed underneath everything. He doesn't see you. Jamie was standing at her locker, tapping his pencil against the metal edge. You good? You spaced out. She blinked, forcing a smile. Yeah, just thinking about the chem quiz. Right, that's tomorrow. He grinned. You'll ace it. She rolled her eyes. You always say that. Because it's true. She wanted to tell him it wasn't that she didn't ace things, she just worked harder to keep up with him. That sometimes she studied until her eyes hurt because she couldn't stand the thought of being left behind. But she didn't. Instead, she smirked and said, Flattery won't make me share my notes. Jamie laughed, the sound warm and familiar. Worth a shot. Lawson walked by then, shooting Raylan a look over her shoulder, one that said, You see what I mean? Raylan made a face at her friend, pretending not to understand, but her stomach twisted all the same. That Friday night, Raylan ended up at Jamie's house again, their usual study spot. His mom waved from the kitchen when she came in, calling, Back again, Raylan? Someone's got to make sure he passes calc, Raylan said, grinning. Jamie's mom laughed. Then you deserve an award. Jamie shook his head, pretending to be offended. You people have no faith in me. You just have Raylan, his mom teased before disappearing down the hall. They sat up at the dining room table, notebooks spread between them, highlighters scattered like confetti. Jamie leaned over a page, explaining something about derivatives with the kind of focus Raylan could never fake. She tried to listen. She really did. But every time he smiled at the paper, she wondered how it would feel if he ever smiled like that at her. Ray? He asked, snapping her back. You okay? Yeah. She coughed lightly. Totally. You look weird. Thanks, she said flatly. That's exactly what a girl wants to hear. Jamie laughed. You know what I mean. Do I? She teased. He reached over and flicked her pen cap at her. You're impossible. And you're distracted, she said quickly, redirecting. Come on, let's see if you actually remember the formulas. They went back to work, but her heart wasn't in it. Somewhere between the numbers and laughter, she felt the familiar ache creep in that soft, stupid kind of ache that made her wish she could just turn her feelings off. Later, when she got home, her phone buzzed. Lawson, so did you tell him yet? Raylan sighed, falling back on her bed. Raylan, tell him what? Lawson, that you're in love with him, obviously. Raylan, LOL, good joke. Lawson, I'm serious, Nichols. Raylan, you always are. Lawson, and you never are. Raylan stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. Raylan, maybe someday. She didn't hit send. By Monday, the conversation with Lawson had settled somewhere in the back of her mind, but not far enough. She caught herself overanalyzing every word Jamie said, every time he smiled, every time he didn't. At lunch, Jamie was rambling about a physics project, and Raylan was nodding along when Lawson dropped her tray across from them. She gave Raylan a pointed look before taking a bite of her sandwich. "So," Lawson said casually. "Jamie, how's the project? You finished yet?" Jamie shook his head. "Not yet. It's due next week." "You should let Raylan help," Lawson said innocently. "She's great at last-minute miracles." Raylan's eyes widened. "What are you—" Jamie smiled. "Yeah, she's basically my academic safety net." Lawson's gaze flicked to Raylan's, and something unspoken passed between them. "That C?" He said it himself, look. Raylan forced a laugh. "I'm gonna need a raise then," she said. Jamie grinned. "I'll buy you coffee." Big spender. The three of them laughed, but Lawson's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. When Jamie went to toss his tray, Lawson leaned forward, her voice quiet. "He's not trying to hurt you, Ray. He just doesn't know." Raylan blinked, her throat tightening. "Then maybe he will someday." Lawson gave a small, sad smile. "Maybe." That night, Raylan lay in bed, her phone screen lighting up the room. She scrolled past pictures of her classmates, couples at the football game, study group selfies, all of them blurring together. Her thumb hovered over her messages with Jamie. The last one was his usual. "Jamie, thanks for the help today." She wanted to say you're welcome or anytime or love you like she used to, but she didn't. Instead, she whispered it to the dark room where no one would ever hear her. "Love you," she murmured, closing her eyes. And in the quiet, Lawson's words returned again, steady, certain, like a truth she didn't want to face. "He doesn't see you." Chapter 7. The New Girl. Monday morning started with gray skies and the smell of rain in the air, the kind of morning that made Raylan want to crawl back into bed and stay there. But Jamie had texted her 5 minutes after his alarm went off. "Jamie, don't forget the calc packet. Jamie, and bring caffeine." Raylan, "You mean for you or me?" Jamie, "Both." So she showed up to school with 2 lattes and her hair pulled into a low bun, yawning as she made her way to their first period. It was one of those slow starts, teachers sipping coffee, kids dragging their backpacks, everyone half asleep. Raylan found her usual seat in AP Chem, right next to Jamie, who gave her a grin the moment she set the cups down. "You're a lifesaver," he said. "I'm aware." She slid one toward him, then sank into her chair. "If you spill that again, I'm never buying you caffeine ever." That was one time. "It was all over my notes." He laughed, a warm, easy sound that made her forget for a second how tired she was. Raylan was halfway through unzipping her bag when their teacher, Mr. Danner, walked in with someone behind him, a girl Raylan had never seen before. "All right, class," Mr. Danner began. "Before we get started, we have a new student joining us this semester. Everyone, this is Callie Rhodes. She transferred from Crescent Hill." Raylan straightened a little in her seat. Crescent Hill was a private school 2 towns over, the kind of place with manicured lawns and tuition brochures. Callie stood at the front, clutching her notebook to her chest. She had long, honey-blonde hair that curled at the ends, pale green eyes, and a soft, nervous smile that immediately made people like her. "Hi," Callie said, voice quiet but friendly. I'm really excited to be here. I heard this class is challenging." A few kids laughed. Mr. Danner smiled. "That's one way to put it. There's an empty seat behind Jamie and Raylan. You can sit there." Raylan watched as Callie made her way down the row. When she passed, she smelled faintly of vanilla. Simple, clean, effortless. "Hey," Callie said when she sat down. "I'm Callie." "Raylan," she replied. "Welcome to the circus." Callie laughed softly. "Guess I'll need to catch up, huh?" Jamie turned around in his seat. "I can help if you want. I've got all the notes from the first unit." Raylan smiled because what else could she do? "That'd be great," Callie said. "Thanks." The bell rang and class began, but Raylan couldn't shake the tiny twist of something in her stomach. Not jealousy, exactly just awareness. By the time lunch rolled around, everyone knew the new girl's name. Callie Rhodes, Friendly, polite, already asking the right questions in class. She had that kind of glow people noticed without meaning to. Jamie carried both their trays to their usual table, where Lawson was already sitting. Raylan sat beside her, trying not to stare across the room where Callie was talking to a group of girls from student council. "So," Lawson said, popping open her water bottle. "You've met her?" "Who?" Raylan asked too quickly. Lawson raised an eyebrow. "The new girl? Blonde, pretty, probably knows how to fold napkins into swans." Raylan laughed. "You're ridiculous." "I'm observant," Lawson said, echoing the same tone she'd used last week. Raylan rolled her eyes. "She's nice, and smart, and fine." Lawson hummed. "You said fine like it was an insult." "I didn't." "Uh-huh." Jamie slid into the seat across from them, completely oblivious to the undertone. "So, Callie's in my calc class too," he said between bites. "She's trying to catch up before midterms. I might help her go over some stuff." Lawson kicked Raylan's foot under the table. "Oh," Raylan said, forcing a smile. "That's nice of you." "Yeah, she seems cool," he said. "She's actually transferring because her mom got a job at the university downtown. She wants to go pre-med." Lawson snorted. "Of course she does." Jamie frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," Lawson said innocently, stabbing her salad. Raylan tried to laugh it off, but her throat felt tight. "You and your rescue projects," she teased lightly. Jamie grinned, not catching the edge beneath it. "Guess I can't help it." She didn't know why that made her chest hurt. The next few days were a blur of little changes. Callie ended up joining their study group after class one afternoon, just for help on a few topics, she'd said. Jamie was all too happy to explain things, patient and bright-eyed, his voice softer than usual when he talked to her. Raylan sat beside him, pretending to read her own notes but really just listening. "You just plug in the variable here," he said, leaning over Callie's notebook. "See? It's not as bad as it looks." Callie laughed. "Easy for you to say." He smiled that smile, the one that used to make Raylan feel like she was the only one in the room. Now she wasn't so sure. When they left class, Lawson caught up with her. "So," she started, drawing the word out, "how's our golden girl doing?" Raylan frowned. "Don't call her that." "Why not?" "Because she's nice." Lawson gave her a look. "You sound like you're trying to convince yourself." Raylan sighed. "It's not her fault. I mean, she's literally just being friendly." "And Jamie's literally being clueless." Raylan pressed her lips together. "I know." Lawson slung an arm over her shoulder as they walked toward the parking lot. "Just don't let it eat you up, okay?" "It's not." Raylan. "It's not," she repeated, softer this time. "I promise." But that night, when she was lying in bed scrolling through her phone, she saw a notification pop up a photo on Jamie's story. It was a picture of his notes, the caption reading, "Study partners keeping me alive, lol." Underneath, tagged in the corner, Callie.Rhodes. Raylan stared at it for a long time before locking her screen. Her heart didn't break. Not really, but something inside her shifted a quiet, sinking feeling that maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. The next morning, Jamie waved at her in the hall like everything was the same. And maybe it was. But when he said, "Hey, Ray," she heard the echo of something she couldn't name. And when he smiled the same smile she used to think meant something she wondered if it ever did. Chapter 8. First Encounter. The first thing Raylan noticed about Callie Rhodes up close was that she smiled like she meant it. Not the kind of polite, practiced smile girls used when they met someone new, but a real one, soft and bright and completely disarming. It happened on a Wednesday, 3 days after she'd transferred in. Jamie had asked Raylan to stay after class to help sort flashcards for their upcoming chemistry quiz, and Raylan said yes without thinking. She'd planned to walk home afterward, maybe grab milk from the corner store for her mom, but before she could even open her binder, Jamie was waving someone over. "Hey, Callie, we're just reviewing," he said. You can join if you want. Raylan blinked. Where? Callie smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Oh, I don't want to intrude. You're not, Jamie said easily, already pulling out another chair. And just like that, she wasn't. Raylan tried to ignore the flicker of disappointment in her chest as she handed over a stack of cards. We're doing a speed round, she said, forcing cheer into her tone. Jamie's not allowed to look at the answers, but he always cheats anyway. I do not cheat. Uh-huh, she said. That's what a cheater says. Callie laughed, light and genuine. You two are funny. Raylan offered a small smile. Depends on the day. For the next 40 minutes, the three of them worked through reactions, conversions, and formulas, Jamie bouncing between confident and cocky as always. Callie held her own surprisingly well. When Raylan asked, "What's the oxidation state of sulfur in SO3?" Jamie groaned. Callie tilted her head thoughtful. +6? Jamie looked at her impressed. That's right. Raylan gave a small, polite nod. Nice. And she meant it. She did. But the whole time, something in her stomach felt tight, like she was holding her breath without realizing it. They left the classroom together once the final bell rang. The hallway buzzed with noise lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking, that end-of-day chaos Raylan usually loved. Callie walked between them, adjusting the strap of her bag. I'm still getting used to how big this place is, she said. At Crescent Hill, there were maybe 60 kids in my grade. Jamie nodded. Yeah, we're kind of the opposite of that. Total zoo here. Zoo's one word for it, Raylan said, smiling faintly. Callie looked between them, curious. So you two have known each other forever? Since 3rd grade, Jamie said instantly. Raylan's lips curved. We bonded over detention. He dared me to throw a pencil at the ceiling. It stuck, he said proudly. Callie laughed. That's adorable. Raylan didn't know why that word adorable made her feel so exposed. By the time they reached the parking lot, Jamie had launched into a story about freshman year science fair, gesturing animatedly while Callie listened, laughing at all the right moments. Raylan trailed a step behind them, watching how easily they seemed to click. When they got to their cars, Jamie turned to both of them. Hey, maybe we can all study again tomorrow? I've got that big calc test coming up, and Raylan keeps saying she's gonna drill it into my brain until I get an A. Raylan smiled, but it felt practiced. Sure, she said. Sounds fun. Cool, Callie said, eyes bright. Thanks, Raylan. Of course. When Raylan got into her car, she sat for a moment before turning the key. Through the windshield, she could see Jamie still talking to Callie, probably giving her his number or directions or something harmless. Her chest felt hollow. Not painful. Just quieter than usual. That evening, Raylan sat at her desk, a half-finished chemistry worksheet in front of her and her phone face down beside it. Her mom knocked softly on the door. Honey? Yeah? Dinner's ready. Also, Lawson's on the phone. Raylan sighed and picked it up. Hey, Law. Lawson's voice crackled through the speaker. You sound weird. What happened? Nothing. Liar. Raylan spun in her chair, staring at the string lights hanging over her bed. It's just, there's this new girl. Callie. Oh yeah, Stanford Barbie. Raylan laughed despite herself. She's actually really nice. That's the worst kind, Lawson said. You can't even hate them. Exactly. So, what's your plan? My plan? To not spiral, Lawson said simply, because I can hear it in your voice. Raylan sighed. I'm fine. She's just new. Jamie's helping her out, that's all. Lawson made a skeptical noise. Sure. I mean it. He's just being him. You know how he is. Yeah, Lawson said, softer now. I know exactly how he is. They sat in silence for a second, the kind that felt comfortable. Then Lawson added, You know I'm on your side, right? I know. Good. Because if he starts pulling any stupid oblivious boy stuff, I'm slapping him with a textbook. Raylan laughed again, and it felt genuine this time. Please record it when you do. Always. After they hung up, Raylan stared at her phone for a long time. A part of her wanted to text Jamie just something small, like good luck studying or don't forget your packet, but she didn't. Instead, she opened her chemistry book and underlined the same sentence 3 times without reading it. The next day, the 3 of them met up in the library after school. Jamie sprawled across the table with his calculator, Raylan sat across from him, and Callie filled the empty seat beside her. It should have been comfortable. It used to be. But Raylan couldn't shake the sense that she was suddenly on the outside of a circle she used to fit perfectly into. Okay, Jamie said, tapping his pencil. Question 1. What's the limit as x approaches? Don't start with limits, Raylan groaned. Ease us in. Fine, he said, grinning. Callie's pick then. Callie glanced up from her notes. Derivatives? Traitor, Raylan muttered. They all laughed. For the next hour, Raylan did what she always did, kept things light. She teased Jamie for zoning out, helped Callie find formulas in the textbook, made jokes about them being team overachiever. But underneath all of it, there was a strange heaviness, like she was watching the beginning of something and pretending it didn't bother her. At one point, Jamie leaned toward Callie to look at her notes, and Raylan caught herself staring at the space between them the way their shoulders almost touched, how easily he laughed when she said something. She looked down quickly, pretending to text. When the session ended, Callie thanked them both. You guys are seriously the nicest people here, she said. I was so nervous transferring in. Raylan smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Don't worry, you'll fit right in. And she meant it even if it hurt to say. That night, Raylan sat on her bed with her window cracked open, listening to the rain starting outside. Her phone buzzed a message from Jamie. Jamie, thanks for today. Jamie, you're seriously the best. Jamie, Callie said she learned more in 1 hour than she did all week, LOL. Raylan stared at the messages. Her thumbs hovered over the keyboard. Raylan, glad to help. She deleted it. Raylan, tell her she did great. She deleted that too. In the end, she didn't send anything. Instead, she set her phone face down again and whispered to the empty room, Good night, love you. Just like she always did, the words soft, automatic, and unheard. Chapter 9, Unspoken. Jamie's desk was a mess again, a battlefield of flashcards, open notebooks, and half-drunk mugs of coffee. Raylan sat cross-legged on his bed, highlighter cap in her mouth, flipping through his AP Chem notes like she'd been appointed as his unofficial secretary. Okay, she said, squinting down at the page. What's the difference between molarity and molality? And don't say, one has an extra L. Jamie grinned without looking up from his notebook. But that's true. Yeah, and that's why you almost failed the first quiz, she shot back, the cap clicking between her teeth. Answer, genius. He leaned back in his chair, spinning lazily. Molarity is moles per liter of solution. Molality is moles per kilogram of solvent. Happy? Ecstatic, she said, jotting a small check mark next to the question. You might actually survive this exam. He smirked. Only because you won't stop terrorizing me. That's what friends are for, she said, half under her breath, half to herself. The room was warm with the kind of comfort that came from knowing someone for too long, the kind where silence didn't need to be filled. The soft hum of his desk lamp flickered against the walls, catching on the posters of bands he'd stopped listening to years ago. The kind Raylan remembered putting up with him in 8th grade, when they'd decided his room needed personality. She glanced up. You need a break. You're starting to look like one of those cautionary tales they tell freshmen don't overstudy, or you'll turn into a Jamie Porter. Funny, he muttered, stretching his arms above his head. You say that now, but when I'm at Stanford. There it was, the word that still hit her somewhere deep and unspoken. Stanford. He said it so casually, like it was already decided. And maybe it was. For him, at least. You'll be insufferable, she said, keeping her voice light. You'll walk around in a hoodie that says Stanford and never let anyone forget. Maybe, he said, spinning back to face her. You'll visit though, right? She smiled even though it stung. If I'm not too busy curing sick puppies. He laughed, the sound easy and familiar. Right, Dr. Nichols, future animal whisperer. Raylan threw a pillow at him. Shut up. The pillow hit him square in the chest, and he caught it with a triumphant grin. It was the same playful back and forth they'd always had, but lately she'd started to feel the undercurrent beneath it that she was trying a little too hard to keep things normal. Jamie opened his laptop, scrolling through something she couldn't see. Oh, Callie said something funny in class today. He started, tone casual. We were doing that group problem and she... Raylan blinked, her focus splintering. Callie said, he hadn't even realized he said her name like that, soft, easy, familiar. She leaned back against his headboard, clutching the pillow. What'd she say? He looked up briefly. She made this joke about the teacher's example, you know how he always uses random objects? She said something like, if I ever need to calculate the molarity of a latte, I'll call you. It doesn't sound funny now, but everyone cracked up. Raylan forced a laugh. Wow, comedy gold. Jamie didn't notice the sarcasm. Yeah, she's actually pretty quick. She transferred from a magnet school, so she's ahead in some stuff. I've been helping her with a few labs. Her voice caught before she could stop it. You've been what? Helping her. She missed a couple labs before transferring, so I offered to catch her up. It's no big deal. Raylan nodded, trying not to stare too hard at his expression. Right, no big deal. He leaned over, nudging her foot. Don't sound so suspicious. I'm not suspicious, she said, though her tone betrayed her. Just surprised you found someone who can actually keep up with you. Jamie raised an eyebrow. You keep up with me. Barely, she said, trying to laugh it off. You're the smart one, remember? He shook his head. You give yourself too little credit. She looked down at her hands, tracing the seam of the pillow. Maybe you give me too much. For a second, the room fell quiet. Just the hum of his laptop fan and the sound of his pencil tapping against the desk. He changed the subject quickly. Anyway, I told her I'd send her my notes, so remind me later. Sure, Raylan said softly. I'll add that to my assistant duties. He grinned. You're the best. The words hit her like they always did, too gentle, too kind, too unknowing. He meant it the way people meant, thanks for the ride or good luck on your test. Just friendly. Always friendly. She set the pillow aside and picked up his flashcards again, shuffling them. Let's get back to work before your brain completely melts. He groaned. You're relentless. Yeah, she said quietly. That's me. By the time they finished, it was nearly midnight. Raylan's throat hurt from reading questions aloud, and Jamie was half asleep at his desk, mumbling something about chemical equations. Okay, genius, she said, standing and stretching. That's enough torture for one night. He yawned. You sure? I still can't remember. Jamie, she said, smiling softly. You've got it. Trust me. He rubbed the back of his neck. You're a good friend, Ray. Friend. The word hung in the air, heavier than it should have been. Yeah, she said, pulling her jacket from his chair. Guess I am. She slung her backpack over her shoulder and lingered at the door, like always. It had become their unspoken routine, her saying goodbye, him giving her that sleepy grin, and her pretending it didn't hurt as much as it did. Night, he said, half distracted as he scribbled something in his notes. Thanks for the help. Night, she echoed, hesitating for half a beat longer. Then, as always, she said it. Softly. Habitually. Love you. He laughed, not even looking up. Yeah, love you too, nerd. He didn't mean it not the way she did. Not the way she wished he did. Raylan smiled anyway, because that was what she did best, smile through the ache. She walked out into the cold air, the faint sound of his laughter following her down the driveway, fading into the dark. Back home, she stood in front of her mirror, her hair messy and her sweater slipping off one shoulder. She studied her reflection for a long time, as if trying to find the part of her that still believed he'd notice. He'd talked about Callie for a total of 5 minutes. Just 5. And yet, it looped in her head like a song she couldn't stop humming. She's actually pretty quick, he'd said. She's funny. I've been helping her. Raylan pulled her knees up onto her bed and exhaled slowly, pressing her forehead against them. It wasn't jealousy, not yet. It was something smaller, a pinch of realization, a spark of fear that maybe, for the first time, she wasn't the only one who could make him laugh like that. And that terrified her. At school the next morning, she tried to pretend everything was normal. Jamie waved to her from across the courtyard. Same smile, same easy tone, and she waved back like nothing had changed. But as he turned to say something to Callie, who stood beside him with her hair pulled up and her books hugged to her chest, Raylan felt that small, traitorous twist inside again. Not anger, just ache. The kind that didn't need words. The kind that lived quietly, unspoken. Chapter 10. Town Fair. The fair only came once a year, and somehow it always smelled exactly the same: fried dough, kettle corn, and something faintly metallic from the rides that probably hadn't passed inspection since the 80s. Strings of colored lights zigzagged above the parking lot, swaying in the wind like lazy fireflies. Raylan stood beside Lawson near the ticket booth, hugging her jacket tight against the chill. You'd think by now they'd at least fix the Ferris wheel squeak. Lawson smirked, holding out her wrist for a stamp. That squeak is tradition. It's a death trap. It's our death trap, Lawson said, nudging her. Besides, you love this place. Raylan rolled her eyes but didn't argue. She did love it not for the rides, but for the memories. This was where she and Jamie had spent nearly every fall since middle school. Cotton candy fingers, too many pictures, him trying to win her stuffed animals at every booth. He was terrible at the games, but that never stopped him. As if summoned by thought, his voice came from behind her. Ray! She turned, her hair flipping over her shoulder, to see him jogging toward them, hands shoved into his hoodie pocket, wind in his dark hair. Callie trailed behind, smiling politely, her denim jacket buttoned all the way up. Thought you'd already be here, Jamie said, slightly breathless. We grabbed extra wristbands. Raylan's smile twitched just slightly. Thanks, she said, taking one. Look at you, Mr. Prepared. He grinned. Someone had to keep us organized. Lawson raised an eyebrow. You're adorable when you pretend that's not our job. Jamie chuckled, looping his arm briefly around Raylan's shoulder. You hear that? She's giving you credit. Raylan tried to ignore the warm flush that climbed her neck. It was the same easy affection as always, except tonight. It felt a little heavier. A little borrowed. Callie stepped closer, brushing hair behind her ear. This place is so cute. We never had anything like this in my old town. Jamie's eyes lit up. Yeah, Ray practically grew up here. She knows every booth. Every scam, Lawson corrected. Don't trust her near the ring toss. Raylan smirked. I'll have you know I'm a professional at the ring toss. Jamie grinned at her like old times. Sure you are. The moment stretched warm and familiar until Callie spoke again, and it broke apart like glass. Let's go on the Ferris wheel first, Callie asked. It's such a good view. Jamie nodded instantly. Yeah, good idea. You guys coming? Lawson shrugged. I'll wait. That thing creaks louder than my grandma's porch swing. Raylan forced a light laugh. Same. I'll sit this one out. Jamie frowned. You sure? Positive. Go on. She smiled so he wouldn't see it as anything more. He hesitated a moment, then nodded. All right, be right back. And just like that, she watched him walk toward the line beside Callie, two silhouettes under blinking carnival lights, shoulders almost brushing. Lawson leaned beside her against the booth counter. You're really gonna stand here pretending that doesn't bug you? Raylan stared ahead, jaw tight. I'm fine. Uh-huh. I am. Her voice wavered before she steadied it. He's allowed to have other friends, you know? Lawson handed her a piece of funnel cake. You're allowed to be jealous, you know. Raylan didn't answer. She just tore off a corner and popped it into her mouth, the powdered sugar sweet and choking all at once. By the time Jamie and Callie climbed off the Ferris wheel, the night had deepened into that soft kind of blue that made everything feel dreamlike. The fair buzzed around them laughter, music, and the steady hum of lights. Jamie spotted Raylan right away, still holding the funnel cake, now dusted entirely across her sweater. "Did you save me some?" he asked. She looked down. "You mean the sugar or the actual cake?" "Both." "Then no." He laughed, brushing the crumbs from her sleeve. "You're a mess." "And whose fault is that?" she said, grinning despite herself. "You left me unsupervised." "You look like a powdered donut." "Wow, thanks." He opened his mouth to reply, but a loud ding from nearby cut him off the game booths, calling for challengers. Jamie's eyes lit up. "Ring toss, come on." "Oh no," Lawson groaned. "Here we go." Raylan followed anyway. She couldn't not. Jamie always loved proving he could win something, even though he never did. He paid for 3 tries, handed her the last ring, and said, "For luck." She tossed it half-heartedly, and it clinked off the bottle. He missed all 3. Callie giggled beside them. "Close." Jamie sighed. "It's rigged." Lawson folded her arms. "Told you." But then the vendor, clearly taking pity, slid a small prize across the counter, a cheap stuffed dolphin. "For effort," he said. Jamie held it out toward Raylan automatically. "Here." She blinked. "You won it. You give it to her." He frowned. "What?" "No, I always—" He paused, because they both knew he always gave them to her. Raylan smiled, trying to make it easy. "It's fine, Jamie, really." He hesitated, then handed it to Callie, who blushed slightly. "Thanks." Raylan's heart dropped a fraction, and she hated that it did. Lawson didn't say a word, but her glance said everything. They walked through the fairgrounds as the night wound down, neon lights reflecting in puddles, the sound of distant music fading. Raylan kept pace beside Jamie, close enough to feel the warmth of his arm, but not close enough to touch. Callie peeled off to grab a drink, leaving them alone for the first time that evening. "She's nice," Raylan said, her voice light. Jamie nodded. "Yeah, she's great. You'd like her more if you talked to her." "Maybe." He looked at her, then really looked as if trying to read something in her tone. "You okay?" She forced a grin. "Why wouldn't I be?" He shrugged, smiling again. "You're just quiet tonight." "I'm fine," she said, then added quickly, "just tired." He reached out and bumped her shoulder gently. "Then next round of funnel cakes on me." "Deal," she said, but it came out softer than she meant. They kept walking, and she tried to memorize the moment, the sound of his laugh, the glow of the lights, the way his hand swung close enough that if she just reached a little farther, she could take it. But she didn't. She never did. When Lawson dropped her off later that night, Raylan sat in the car for a moment before getting out, staring at the dolphin stuffed toy now sitting in her lap. She didn't even remember picking it up. Jamie must have handed it to her at some point before they left. Lawson turned off the radio. "You okay?" Raylan smiled faintly. "Yeah, why wouldn't I be?" Lawson looked at her like she didn't buy it for a second. "Because you looked like you were trying not to cry when he handed her that toy." Raylan swallowed hard, staring at it. He didn't mean anything by it. "Maybe not," Lawson said, "but you did." Raylan blinked fast, forcing a laugh. "You think too much." "Maybe you don't think enough." She smiled again, the kind that hurt more than it healed. "Good night, Lawson." When she got inside, her mom was already asleep. The house was quiet, just the hum of the fridge and the faint buzz of the streetlight outside her window. She set the stuffed dolphin on her desk beside a framed picture of her and Jamie from 2 summers ago. Laughing, soaked from a water balloon fight. No space between them at all. Now it felt like there was nothing but space. She crawled into bed and stared up at the ceiling, her chest tight. The sound of the fair still echoed faintly in her mind. Laughter, lights, music. A place where nothing bad ever happened. But the thing about fairs, she thought, is that they always pack up eventually. And when they do, all that's left behind are tire marks and echoes. Chapter 11. A missed call. The library was quieter than usual that afternoon, the kind of quiet that made every page turn sound louder than it should. I sat in my usual corner seat, back by the window, next to the old radiator that clicked like a heartbeat every few minutes. The light outside was starting to fade, painting everything in that sleepy golden color that makes you think about things you shouldn't. My history notes were spread out in front of me, but my brain had already left the building. I glanced at my phone. No messages. I told myself I wasn't waiting for one, but the way I kept checking every few minutes made me a liar. After a while, I gave up pretending and opened a new text. Ray, you still down to study tonight? I can come over or we can meet at the library. I stared at the blinking cursor, rereading the message twice before hitting send. Then I leaned back, tapping my pencil against the edge of my notebook. He'd probably say yes. He usually did. Even when he was tired or busy, Jamie always made time for me. 5 minutes passed, then 10. No reply. I pulled my hoodie tighter and tried to focus again, though the words on the page kept blurring. By the time my phone buzzed, I jumped a little. Jamie, sorry, can't tonight. Working with Callie on our bio project. Oh, just that. No smiley face. No follow-up. No maybe tomorrow. Just working with Callie. For a second, I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I started typing something light, Ray. Have fun. Then paused. My fingers moved again, almost on autopilot, adding words I didn't mean to type. Ray. Have fun. Wish it was me. The moment I saw it on the screen, my heart flipped. I deleted the last part so fast my phone nearly slipped from my hand. Ray. Have fun. Then send. I dropped the phone face down on the table and sat there, staring at nothing. The radiator clicked again. Somewhere, a printer word. But all I could hear was the silence between us, stretching longer every day. I packed up my stuff early and left the library before it got dark. The air outside was crisp, the kind that makes you want to wrap your arms around yourself, even when you're wearing 2 layers. The streetlights were just flickering on, and the smell of rain was still hanging around from earlier. On the walk home, I kept replaying the text in my head. Working with Callie on our bio project. Not a big deal. It shouldn't be a big deal. They'd been paired up for weeks. He even told me about it when the groups were first assigned, how she was smart and organized, how they worked well together. I'd laughed then. Told him maybe she'd finally get him to do his part instead of last-minute cramming. Back then, it was a joke. Now it didn't feel funny. When I got home, the house was quiet. Mom was on a late shift at the clinic, and Dad was out of town again. The only light came from the kitchen, where our cat, Waffles, was curled up on the counter like he paid rent. Hey, buddy, I said softly, dropping my bag. He blinked at me like he understood everything I wasn't saying. I poured myself a glass of water and stood there, staring at the fridge covered in old photos and magnets. There was one picture I always stopped at. A photo of Jamie and me from the 8th grade science fair. We were standing side by side, holding up a solar system model we'd made out of styrofoam balls and glitter paint. He was grinning so hard his eyes were almost closed. I had glue on my sleeve. Back then, things were simple. I didn't know that someday we'd be in high school, talking about projects with other people, or that my stomach would twist just hearing another girl's name next to his. I went up to my room and flopped onto my bed, scrolling through my messages again. The chat between us used to be filled with everything. Inside jokes, song links, random thoughts that didn't mean anything but still did. Lately, it was different. More functional, less us. Jamie. Got the notes from Kem? Ray. Yeah, I'll send them. Jamie. Thanks. I ran my thumb across the edge of my phone, like somehow touching it softer would make the words mean more. Then, against my better judgment, I opened Instagram. Jamie had posted a story 2 hours ago. It was a picture of an open notebook, 2 coffee cups, and Callie's handwriting on a page labeled Cell Division. The caption said, Study Grind. It shouldn't have hurt. But it did. The next day at lunch, Lawson immediately noticed the storm cloud hanging over my head. What's with the face? She asked, sitting down across from me with her tray. Nothing, I said automatically, unwrapping my sandwich. Don't give me that. I took a bite just to avoid answering. She waited. Lawson never pushed, but she didn't back off either. Finally, I sighed. He bailed last night, said he was working with Callie on their project. Lawson raised an eyebrow. And you're mad because… I'm not mad, I said, maybe too fast. I just thought we were gonna study together. That's all. I frowned. What? You've got that look. What look? I swear I'm fine, but I actually want to throw my phone out the window look. I laughed weakly. Wow. Didn't know that was my signature expression. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. You know, Ray, it's okay to admit it bothers you. It would bother anyone. It's just school, I muttered, staring at my sandwich. It's not like that. Maybe not, but if you keep pretending you're okay, you're gonna explode. I shot her a small glare, but she just smiled knowingly. That's the thing about Lawson. She always sees through me. After school, I found myself standing by the vending machine outside the science hall. I wasn't waiting for him. Not exactly. But when the door opened and Jamie walked out with his backpack slung over one shoulder, my heart still jumped. He looked tired. Messy hair, hoodie sleeves pushed up, pen still stuck behind his ear. Callie walked beside him, laughing about something I couldn't hear. When she spotted me, she waved. Hey, Raylan. I forced a smile and waved back. Hey. Jamie smiled too, but it wasn't the kind that made my heart flip anymore. It was the polite one. They were friends, remember? Smile. You heading home? He asked. Yeah, I said, shifting my bag higher on my shoulder. You? Probably gonna grab coffee with Callie. We're almost done with the project. Cool, I said, the word bitter on my tongue. Wanna come? I blinked. What? He looked almost guilty. I mean, if you want, we'll probably just be editing slides. No, it's fine, I said quickly. You guys go ahead. You sure? Totally. He nodded like that settled it. All right. I'll call you later, okay? I smiled weakly. Yeah, later. Then I turned and walked away before my face could show what I was really feeling. That night, I waited. I told myself I wasn't, but every time my phone lit up, I hoped it was him. 8 o'clock, nothing. 9. 10. Nothing. By 10:30, I gave up and tossed my phone onto my pillow. It buzzed once, a notification that wasn't him. I picked it up anyway, just to make sure. Still nothing. After a while, exhaustion won. I turned off my lamp and lay in the dark, staring at the faint shadows of the tree branches outside my window. Then, just as I was starting to drift off, my phone buzzed again. Jamie Porter missed call. My chest tightened. I unlocked my phone, heart pounding. One voicemail. I pressed play. Hey, Ray. His voice came through, soft and low. Sorry it's late. Just wanted to say thanks for the notes from last week. I used them tonight. Also, the project's finally done. I'll see you tomorrow. Night. That was it. I listened to it twice, each time hoping it would somehow sound different. Then I hit delete. The next morning, I woke up early but didn't get out of bed right away. The sky outside was a pale gray, the kind of morning that makes everything feel heavier. I thought about calling him back, about saying something, anything, that would make it all feel normal again. But what would I even say? Hey, sorry I missed your call. I'm fine, just slowly realizing I might be losing my best friend and the boy I love at the same time. Yeah, that'd go over great. So instead, I got dressed, grabbed my backpack, and left early enough that I wouldn't have to walk with him. At school, he caught up with me anyway. Hey, he said, jogging up beside me. You didn't answer last night. Yeah, I fell asleep. You missed the end of my voicemail, though. I said you're the best. He smiled, that lopsided grin that used to undo me completely. Oh, I said, pretending to adjust the strap of my bag. Thanks. He studied me for a second. You okay? Yeah, I lied easily. Just tired. He nodded, accepting it without question. We should hang out soon. It feels like we haven't in forever. Sure, I said. And I meant it, even if it hurt. Even if part of me was still replaying the sound of his voice saying, "Night, Ray," like we weren't already slipping into separate worlds. That night, I sat on my bed with my phone in my hand again. I thought about calling him, about saying all the things I'd deleted. Instead, I opened notes and started typing. Have fun. Wish it was me. Then I hit backspace until the screen was empty again. Because wanting him didn't make him mine, and missing him didn't make him stay. Chapter 12. The mirror moment. Lawson meant for the words to be a shove. They landed like one. We were on the top row of the old bleachers, the school field behind us, slick with early morning fog. Lawson had dragged me out of my room and off my bed because you're becoming a hermit and that's just not cute, which, in practical terms, meant she was right, and I was convenient and soft and probably being melodramatic. She handed me an iced coffee like she always did, 2 pumps too many caramel, and sat down, legs crossed, a worry line already etched between her brows. You can't keep waiting for him to wake up, she said, not looking at me when she said it. She never did the gentle approach when she thought truth needed to be said. Lawson was incapable of hem and haw. She liked the clean cut of truth. It felt sharper coming from her. I bristled at first. Reflex, defense, muscle memory. What do you even mean? I asked, too breezily, because that's how you deflect a gut punch. You put on a silly voice and a joke and pretend you weren't just hit by something you couldn't name. She turned to me then, finally, and her eyes were the exact color of someone who'd had this conversation more than once in her head. You literally said, "have fun," when he told you he was working with Callie, she said. You typed, "wish it was me," and deleted it. You cry into your pillow and then text him, "love you," like nothing happened. Ray, you're not being subtle. You're falling apart and pretending string cheese is a life hack. You don't get it, I said, because the obvious line had to be said. He had a project with Callie. That's normal. They're partners, Lawson. People work with people. She made a face like she was trying to tell me something without sounding mean. Yes, people work with people. People also march straight into level 2 feelings without reading the map. You can't keep telling yourself it's fine because it's not a maturity exercise. It's your heart. I reached for the coffee like it would steady me. The cold cup pressed into my palm. I said, "You're dramatic," which was both true and not true. Lawson sighed. "I'm not trying to run you down," she said softer. "I'm trying to keep you from wrecking yourself. Being nice to someone does not entitle you to being noticed. You know that. You've always known that." I chewed on my lip until I tasted metal. "That's not fair." "Is anything fair about this?" Lawson said. "You gave him years of front row seats to you. You taught him your jokes, let him steal the last fries, read his essays, held his backpack when he pretended his hands were full. And he—" She cut herself off, closed her mouth, then started again. "He likes you. He thinks you're the best. But he thinks you're best friend, Ray. Best friend and something else are not interchangeable packages. You can't keep waiting for him to wake up and notice you're not the version of yourself that's on the sidelines." Her bluntness made me angry because it came with the tenderness I couldn't deny. "You act like I'm the one who can't see," I said. "Maybe he will see. Maybe tomorrow he'll get the memo." Lawson looked at me like I was being willfully obtuse. "You don't get memos about love. You get signals. You get moments when someone picks you first." He hasn't picked you first. He picks you in 100 comfortable ways. He picks her in ways that look like practice for picking someone else. You can hope, Ray, but hope isn't a plan. It's a habit, and habits don't build futures. I wanted to protest. I wanted to list all the nights he'd shown up, how he had once stayed up to quiz me for an exam I was terrified of failing, how he sent me a stupid meme the day I had surgery and wrote "stay alive" with 3 exclamation points. I wanted to say all the reasons he might wake up and realize I was something other than background noise. "What if he does?" I said, because it was my last line of defense. "What if I'm wrong about all of this and he does wake up, and he realizes it was me he wanted the whole time?" Lawson's jaw softened. "Then you get to tell me I was dramatic for nothing and I'll buy you a milkshake. But don't base your happiness on what if. Base it on what is. And right now, What is him walking into places with her in his orbit. I stared at the grass, which had frost dusting the blades like hush. I had no words. The punchline of Lawson's sharp truth was lodged inside me, a stone I couldn't spit out. I could feel the edges of it, cold and real. When we went back to the school day, we walked together to class, Lawson flinging out commentary about the physics teacher's tie and me nodding like a functionary. And in the hallway, my phone vibrated with a message from him. Game theory group tonight? Callie and I are meeting after school. I felt my stomach go hollow, as if a room that had always had furniture suddenly had the cushions taken out. Lawson caught the tilt of my face and gave me a look that asked if I wanted to be left to wallow. I did not. I'm coming, I said before thinking. She looked pleased and mildly surprised. Good, I'll show up too. Somebody has to make sure he doesn't accidentally study with her in a cafe booth that has a romantic corner. We both laughed, but the sound of it felt like cheap plastic bouncing off a wall. The whole day was a study in small betrayals, the way Jamie would talk about the calculus problem he and Callie had hashed out, the way he would mention a phrase she'd said in class and replay it like it was valuable. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't trying to hurt me. But he was bringing her into my shared space, making our traditions a background for new jokes and shared references. That afternoon, I went to the meeting like a soldier showing up on parade, ledger in hand, really there to contribute, but secretly on the lookout for evidence that would make all of Lawson's words false. Instead, I got a pleasant cup of coffee, a stack of slides, and the distinct feeling of being the third person on a couch built for two. After the meeting, Jamie walked me to my car. Thanks for coming, he said. He brushed my hand with his fingers when he took his backpack from the bench, and the contact was so quiet and ordinary, I almost missed it. No problem, I said. It was useful. You're the best, he added. And the words landed like they always had. Warm and easy, and not a map, not a plan. That was the worst thing. His warmth never weighed enough. It never contained a blueprint that included me living in his future. I drove home with the heater blasting and the radio playing something I couldn't remember because I was checking the rearview mirror the whole way. Half to make sure I wasn't following him, half to convince myself I was enough. Later that night, I stood in my bathroom and looked at my own reflection. The mirror is nothing special. Small, with a few Polaroids taped to the corner. Me with Lawson at prom. Me and Jamie covered in purple paint from a freshman fraternity volunteer event. Me and Mom laughing over some burnt meal, and in the middle of it all, my face looked just smaller than it felt. I reached out and touched the glass like it was water. My fingers left little prints. I noticed the tired shadows under my eyes, the way my hair refused to do what my brain wanted it to. I was tired. Not the kind of tired that self-care knew how to fix. The fatigue of a heart that keeps rehearsing a thing that doesn't happen. I pressed my palms to the mirror so that my reflection pressed back, and for a while it was just breath and glass and a silhouette that looked very much like the girl who used to be all fearless and loud and sure of herself. You're overreacting, I whispered to my reflection, because people whisper to mirrors when there's no one else to overhear. I thought about what Lawson had said. You can't keep waiting for him to wake up. When I said it in my head, without the comedic voice, it was a fact. Not a moral failing or a sentiment, just a statement. It felt oddly denotative, like a label affixed to something that had been moving for a long time, waiting in progress. A laugh bubbled up at my ribs and I let it out. It wasn't funny. It was a sound somewhere between grief and astonishment, and it tasted like pennies. I pulled my hair into a messy bun and then took it down again. I tried to imagine the scene Lawson had described, Jamie picking me first in a crowded room. The thing about imaginations is sometimes they're generous and sometimes they're honest. Mine was leaning honest. I couldn't see him selecting me. Instead, I saw small moments he reserved for others. A hand finding another hand. A shoulder leaned into a joke. The slow slide of the way someone becomes someone's partner because they're always the chosen recipient of small, curated acts. That thought bruised quietly. I turned off the mirror light and went down the hallway to my bedroom. The house was quiet. Outside the window, the streetlights threw long, anonymous shadows across the lawn. I hesitated at my door and then sat on the floor, back against the wood, letting my knees pull up. In that moment, vulnerability wasn't dramatic. It was ordinary. I let myself feel the whole thing. The ache, the humiliation of loving someone who might never swap seats with you on purpose, the bizarre loneliness of being surrounded by people who could explain your jokes. In the dark, I thumbed open my notes app and typed, not whole paragraphs, just fragments. He makes friends with her because they're similar. He calls me best because he means it as safety. I have been practicing for a reality that hasn't happened. The words were a confession without an audience. Saying them out loud might have made them worse. I thought of all the ways I'd tried to make him see, leaning on him until he'd pull me up, sending heart emojis in the middle of the night when my stomach hurt, giving him an extra copy of notes when his printer died. The tactics were gentle, almost cunning in a grassroots way. None of them were grand. None of them were mastery or melodrama. They were the small, consistent things people do when they refuse to be forgotten. Lawson's blunt truth had been a mirror I couldn't avoid. It hadn't been cruel. It had been exact. I don't want to be the person who waits forever, I said to the ceiling, though I knew I was. I was honest for the first time, not because I felt better, but because the honesty weighed less than the pretending. And then the real admission slipped out like a confession that wasn't polished. I'm scared he never will. There it was. The sentence felt like stepping off a curb. Sudden little vertigo followed by a steadying fall. Saying it made it real in a different way than pushing it away ever had. I had to say it, I realized. I had to give it a shape so it could be seen and then put down. Fear sat in my chest with a heavy, private persistence. Scared of losing him. Scared of being wrong. Scared of restructuring my life around someone who didn't see my name with a capital letter. It wasn't dramatic. It was the slow, human kind of terror that lives in the polite corners of late-night rooms. I thought of Lawson waiting downstairs, of her offering a plan. Not a fancy speech, not a daring ultimatum, just to face facts. She was right. I had been waiting. I had been rehearsing. The mirror moment wasn't a single event. It was a string of those little glances, the social media tags, the casual jokes, the way my phone's blinking light became a tiny, insistent alarm. I did what I always did when faced with the truth that hurt. I wrote it down. Not to try to fix it immediately, but to recognize it, to make it a thing I could touch without it dissolving. I am scared he never will. I am tired of hoping the shape of my life will change without me asking for it. I am afraid that I can't keep being the one to show up when I am the one who needs to be chosen. I read it over once and then closed my notebook. It didn't erase the ache, but it made the ache intelligible. That was something. It was not surrender. It was not a vow. It was an observation pinned to the inside of my chest. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The sun hadn't quite decided whether it wanted to climb over the horizon, and the streets were still soft with sleep. I poured coffee, made my bed, and brushed my teeth with an automatic rhythm. The mirror on the bathroom cabinet looked back at me like a reserved judge, but the face was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to see what he saw. I was looking at myself, unarranged, and trying to imagine what I wanted if the future didn't include him waking up. I wasn't ready to stop loving him. That felt as impossible as asking the rain to stop where it had always fallen. But I was finally ready to name the thing I was doing. Waiting, and understand it wasn't the only option. Naming it made room for a choice. When I left the house, I texted Lawson a single line. You were right. Her reply came in seconds. About time. Coffee later, I'll bring the textbook smackdown plan. I laughed and typed back, bring it. She didn't ask me for details, didn't cheerlead me into a speech. She simply showed up. That was her promise to me. Not to fix everything, but to make sure I didn't have to be brave alone. I sat on the bus and watched the town slide by, thinking about how mirrors work. They take all the light and reflect it back to you. Sometimes they show us what we want to hide. Sometimes they show us what we need to see. For a while, I'd been seeing him everywhere. His smile at the top of my days, some echo of his laugh in the back of the school choir, the way a certain corner of the coffee shop smelled of him. Standing in front of the literal mirror had been the first time I allowed myself to see Raylan. Full stop. I didn't know what the future looked like anymore. Maybe he'd wake up and maybe he wouldn't. Maybe I'd decide to fight and maybe I'd decide to step away. But I knew something else. Lawson was right, and I couldn't keep folding my days around a maybe. That wasn't bravery. That was avoidance with glitter on top. I sent the texts I'd been too nervous to send for weeks. Small ones. Not confessions, not ultimatums. Just small lines back into the world that didn't require his attention as collateral. Hey, coffee on Saturday? I need a study break. Lawson's coming too. Text if you're around. I let the phone sit on the passenger seat. If he texted back immediately, that would be a thing I had to parse. If he didn't, that would be a thing I had to parse. Either way, parsing would no longer be the only thing I did. On the bus, I scribbled in the margins of my notebook, making tiny checklists for myself like it would make me less muddled. Don't wait without planning. Apply to colleges near his possible campus. U for you, Ray. Talk to Mom about scholarship stuff. Hold on to friends that pull you upright. They were not vows. They were the first draft of a new routine. Lawson had given me the shove. The mirror had made me face what the shove meant. When I reached school, my chest felt a little lighter. Not because everything had changed. Not because the ache had left. It was lighter because the weight had a name and a shape, and because I had chosen, for maybe the first time, not to build a life from the phrase, "What if?" I tucked my notebook into my bag and walked toward my locker. Jamie was there, talking to a group of kids about a practice problem. He glanced up, saw me, and gave me that easy, habitual grin. For a split second, I thought about telling him everything. For a split second, I thought about letting the words bubble up and rearrange everything. I didn't. I smiled back, the way two friends do. The smile felt, for now, like something I was practicing for myself. Chapter 13. Her Quiet Resolve. Raylan's alarm went off at 6:45, its tinny ringtone slicing through the quiet of her room. She rolled over, groaning, and smacked her phone until the noise stopped. For a few seconds, she just stared at the ceiling, the faint cracks in the paint that she used to count when she couldn't sleep. She felt that old heaviness again, the kind that wasn't quite sadness, but something slower, quieter. School, homework, the same halls, the same faces, the same boy who didn't see her the way she wanted. She sat up, rubbing her eyes. Then, like a switch flipping, she exhaled through her nose, stretched, and stood. Okay, she muttered half to herself. No more moping. Her mother's voice called from the kitchen. You're up early for once. Miracles happen, Raylan called back, forcing a small grin. She got dressed with unusual care jeans that actually fit, her favorite gray cardigan, hair tied in a neat ponytail. She stared in the mirror for a long moment before slinging her backpack over her shoulder. It was strange how different things looked once she decided to try again. Maybe Lawson was right. Maybe she couldn't wait forever. But maybe she could make her own version of someday, one that didn't depend on Jamie. Still, her stomach twisted when she thought of him. The look on his face when she'd seen him with Callie, the easy way he laughed. It had been weeks since then, but it still echoed. By the time she got to school, the morning sun was spilling gold through the courtyard trees. Lawson waved from a bench, sipping an iced coffee the size of her head. Look who's early, Lawson teased as Raylan sat beside her, and looking like she actually slept for once. Shocking, I know. Lawson's smile softened. So what's the plan? Raylan shrugged, pulling out her notebook. Study. Bury myself in school stuff. I'm not letting my GPA crash because of a boy. Progress, Lawson said approvingly, clinking her cup against Raylan's thermos. Proud of you, babe. Raylan smirked, but her gaze drifted toward the quad where Jamie was laughing with his friends, backpack slung carelessly over one shoulder. Callie wasn't with him today, but her name still hovered like a ghost in Raylan's head. She looked away. By the end of the week, Raylan had become the kind of student teachers loved the one who raised her hand, took meticulous notes, and stayed after class to ask questions. It was easier to focus on something that wasn't him. She started studying with Lawson in the library every afternoon, spreading flashcards across the table like armor. Between textbooks and college brochures, she was building something that resembled purpose. Okay, Lawson said one day, flipping through her own notes. We need to talk about your college list. You're still set on state schools? Raylan hesitated, then looked up. Actually, I've been thinking about maybe applying somewhere near Stanford. Lawson's pen froze midair. Stanford. As in Jamie's Stanford? Raylan's cheeks warmed. It's a good area. They've got great pre-vet programs. It's not about him. Lawson arched an eyebrow. Uh-huh, sure it's not. Raylan scowled, tugging at her pen cap. It's not like I'm following him. I don't know. I don't want to lose everything at once. Lawson's voice softened. You mean him? Raylan didn't answer. The silence stretched, broken only by the quiet hum of the library's fluorescent lights. Then Lawson reached over, resting a hand on Raylan's notebook. I get it, she said gently. But just promise me you're still doing this for you, okay? Raylan met her eyes. I am. I just want to keep my options open. Lawson sighed, half amused, half worried. Fine. But if you end up crying into college brochures, don't say I didn't warn you. Raylan laughed softly, and for the first time in weeks, it felt genuine. Jamie noticed the change before anyone else did. They were in chemistry, waiting for the bell when he leaned over and said, You've been quiet lately. Raylan didn't look up from her notes. Just focused. Focused, he repeated, amused. That's new. She rolled her eyes. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. Seriously, though, you've been different. Different how? I don't know. You seem motivated. His lips curved into a teasing grin. It's kinda inspiring. Raylan's pen froze on the page. Inspiring? She echoed, voice smaller than she meant. Yeah, he said simply. You're always working hard now. It's like you've got this fire. It's cool. Her heart gave a small, traitorous jump. She swallowed and forced a smile. Guess it was time to grow up. He laughed softly. Well, whatever you're doing, it's working. You're amazing. The words hit her like a warm breeze, gentle but devastating. She didn't even realize she was staring until he looked back with that easy, oblivious grin of his. She turned back to her notebook quickly, cheeks flushed. Thanks. He didn't notice the way her hand trembled when she wrote after that. That night, Raylan sat cross-legged on her bed, laptop open, glowing screen reflecting in her eyes. Her cursor blinked on an empty college application essay. She'd filled out everything else, name, GPA, extracurriculars, but the last section asked, why the school? Her fingers hovered over the keys. She thought of sunny California skies, Stanford's leafy campus, and the way Jamie's face had lit up when he got his acceptance letter months ago. She thought of him saying she was amazing. Then she thought of Lawson's voice in her head. Promise me you're doing this for you. Her chest tightened. Finally, she typed. Because I believe in second chances, not just in love or life, but in myself. She stared at it for a long moment before hitting save. The next morning, she was in the kitchen when her mom glanced over her shoulder. You're filling out college apps already? Trying to, Raylan said, sipping her orange juice. Her mom smiled knowingly. You always did like a challenge. So, where are you applying? Raylan hesitated. A few places near Stanford. Her mom raised her brows. Stanford, huh? That's far. I know. Does this have to do with Jamie? Raylan opened her mouth, closed it, then sighed. Maybe, but it's not just that. Her mom's eyes softened. Honey, I know how much you care about him, but don't chase after someone who doesn't see what's right in front of him. Raylan looked down at her glass. I'm not chasing. I'm just keeping the door open. Her mom smiled sadly. Just make sure you're not the only one standing in that doorway. Raylan didn't answer, but the words followed her all the way to school. Later that week, Jamie and Raylan sat on the bleachers after school, waiting for the buses. The autumn air had turned cooler, leaves beginning to drift down from the trees around the field. So, he said, tossing a pebble onto the track. Lawson said you've been applying to colleges already? Raylan nodded. Yeah, trying to get a head start. Any place good? A few near Stanford, she said carefully. He turned to her surprised. Seriously, that's awesome. She laughed softly. You think so? Of course. I mean, that's huge, Ray. I didn't know you were thinking about moving that far. She shrugged, picking at the frayed edge of her sleeve. Just exploring options. Who knows? He smiled, nudging her shoulder. You're going places. I can feel it. She met his eyes, her chest tightening. Yeah, she said quietly. Maybe I am. That night, Raylan lay awake, listening to the rain against her window. She thought about what Lawson said, what her mom said, what Jamie said. She was finally doing something, chasing a dream, even if it was tied to someone she couldn't let go of. But for the first time, it didn't feel pathetic. It felt hopeful. Because maybe, just maybe, she wasn't waiting anymore. She was moving slowly, quietly, towards something that might someday be hers. And if that something happened to be near him, well, so be it. She smiled faintly into the dark. Her quiet resolve had finally settled in.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, stay safe.